Namaskar and welcome to Sansad Television. I am Vishal Dahiya and you're watching our show Perspective, where we bring you detailed analysis of key national and international issues. Today we're going to talk about the 5G rollout, the challenges and the opportunities therein as well. Now, broadband, especially the mobile broadband, has become an integral part of daily lives of the citizens. Rapid expansion of 4G services across the country in the last few years gave a boost to digital connectivity. And now it's time for the 5G, which has the potential to work as a catalyst in achieving larger overall economic growth of the country. Now, 72 gigahertz of spectrum with a validity period of 20 years will be put to auction to be held by the end of July this year, paving the way for a rollout of 5G technology-based services capable of providing speed and capacities which would be about 10 times higher than what is possible through the ongoing 4G services. The government has also allowed for setting up captive 5G networks by big tech firms. In today's episode, we'll discuss and analyze all aspects of 5G spectrum allocation, rollout, its implications, the significance, and of course, the challenges therein as well. And for more on this, we're joined by a distinguished panel of experts. Let me first introduce them to you. Beginning with, we have with us Mr. A.K. Tiwari here in the studio joining us. He's the member Digital Communications Commission, Department of Telecommunications with the Government of India. And we also have with us Mr. Shubhmoy Bhattacharjee, Consulting Editor with the Business Standard. We also are joined by Mr. T.V. Ramachandran, President of the Broadband India Foundation, who is joining us virtually. Welcome to you as well, Mr. Ramachandran. Let me begin with you, Mr. Tiwari, and let's first start by understanding, some key terms. Of course, all of us know a lot about 5G by now because there's been a lot of talk going on for quite a few years. But when we're talking about the actual implementation of the ground, what happens with the journey? The rollout will begin with the auction of the spectrum. One key highlights of the spectrum auction there, which happens in July. And then from there onwards, what's the journey going to be like?
Auction will be at the end of the July, and then probably services will be launched somewhere in the August actually, and then roll out across cities and across every nook and corner. And of course, first it will come to tier 1 cities and metros, and then to tier 2 all. So it will take around 2 to 3 quarters to feel from the user's perspective. And for country like Pan India, it may take some around more than a year or so, based on the investment and based on the user demand. So it will take that much time.
Okay, and what is its impact going to be? Because there's a lot being talked about how the speed will, that is the broadband connectivity speed will increase at least 10 times
Yes.
what we are now experiencing, which is 4G. But then how does it benefit the general, common citizen of the country?
See, for the common citizen, basically, the enhanced speed, which is called enhanced mobile broadband, that is one of the feature. See, in the 5G, there are 3 technically features actually, as per the 3GPP ITU standards. One is the enhanced broadband, another is the ultra reliability and low latency. So as per the low latency is concerned, that will be used for the industrial applications, which is mainly Industry 4.0. So that will contribute majorly for the $1 trillion economy of digital economy, it is said actually, which is our vision of the Honorable Prime Minister. And this enhanced broadband, mobile broadband speed, that will definitely give the boost to many use cases for the common citizen of the country, like online classes, agriculture, healthcare, and all these things. Even after this 5G, once it is fully available to the remotest area of the country, the one use case which is still our service providers are trying actually, and it is under trial, that robotic surgery will be possible. A doctor sitting somewhere in the very metro city and expert on something, or even remotely in somewhere in the globe actually, he can see a patient sitting somewhere and even do operations also. It is not, of course, totally developed. Once the robotic technology is completely developed, then operation will be possible somewhere in the remote places like Ladakh.
Okay.
So this is going to change the landscape, and it is going to affect every common citizen. Another application of, suppose, the low latency and ultra reliability, connected vehicles actually. On the ground today, you find every day that in the traffic jams, ambulances are not able to steer the route actually. So on the connected this thing, all the signals on the across the journey actually, they will make it clear the traffic
A green corridor
again,
will be.
and they will make the green corridor like that actually.
Okay,
So
okay.
automatically it will be possible.
Okay, that sounds a huge impact on the people's life. Let's come to the spectrum allocation itself. And Chiboy, you've seen and covered a lot of spectrum allocations. Now the question I'm asking is, what is different this time? What are the highlights in terms of the difference vis-a-vis the spectrum allocation which happened earlier, be it in the case of 2G, 3G or 4G, and now that we're talking about 5G spectrum allocation, how is it different?
Well, one of the first things I should say, looking at it from the economics point of view, is first of all, the companies which are coming in, we know only there'll be 4 companies. So that's very clear. What it does is, whoever is picking up spectrum will be doing it in a far more rational way. That is significant. This is not to mean that the last auctions also had similar numbers, but this time it's very clear that since there are no jokers in the pack, the companies which are there are going to be extremely clear about what they want, and so therefore that will determine their bid. Now that means that the companies will have already worked out a business plan based on what they need, rather than risking what the others will be trying to do. That's one.
Okay.
So that allows for a much more practical allocation of the scarce spectrum. The second part is that the companies know that when they are going in for 5G, and remember in middle of August, we've already had, in fact, one of the earlier shows we have discussed this, it's most probable the Prime Minister himself will announce something about it on 15th August. Now, that would have a big bang effect. So companies know that there will be an expectations that would have been built up. So wherever they are bidding for, whichever circles of the 22 telecom circles they are bidding for, the companies know that their delivery will be very important. And as Mr. Tiwari pointed out, they will be allocating their investment in spectrum vis-a-vis the corresponding investments that they need to make in their technology that they will need to bring in, because that's the other part of the technology that they'll need to bring in much more practically.
Okay.
That also means that you would find, and that's what we are guessing, that the 5G applications that would be coming in would be far more business case basis, rather than just sort of like Me Too doing it better. That's I think is something to be hoped for, and I think that is what we will be seeing.
Okay.
That this time the buying of the spectrum as well as the technology that we're putting in, the companies know that what are the stakes, where they will need to put it in, and what is the time frame.
Okay.
So essentially, we see because 5G, like people would think of 5G as that 5G पहुंच गया यही है. 5G is not the end of the road. You have 6Gs and
of
others,
course,
and
the
they'll
technology
keep on going.
keeps on
So
moving.
basically, what will happen is that the telecom sector, when we are saying it's sort of cleaning itself up, this is an opportunity where you'd find a lot of smart buying of spectrum. That's what I expect to happen.
Okay, so it'll have to be smart buying, smart investment, and moving ahead with the times as well, because there are certain aspects of the guidelines also. The spectrum allocation is only for 20 years. The companies may surrender in 10 years if they want to. So those are finer points there. Let me also bring in the industry perspective here. Mr. Ramchandran is with us. Mr. Ramchandran, you've been patiently hearing to what Mr. Tiwari and Mr. Bhattacharjee was pointing out. Now, what we're trying to understand is specifically one aspect here, which Mr. Tiwari earlier mentioned in his response, in terms of how this is going to bring a transformative change when we are talking about the industry application, because that becomes really important, and that is going to have a lot of impact on the lives of common people as well.
Right, Vishal Bhai, that is a very good perspective that Mr. Tiwari brought out. This is going to be a G which affects everybody in a very different way, because first and foremost, this is the first G out of the 4Gs. We have seen 4G so far. Fifth G, 5G, is the first G stepping out of the telecom vertical and going across to all verticals, whether it is manufacturing, whether it is agriculture, logistics and transportation, healthcare, every research, all of them will be feeling the impact of this G because it is going to be a property for all of them, a very useful resource for all of them, because it is going to transform their lives in a very different way. So that is the first point to be appreciated, and we must therefore recognize that here it is not just telecom companies, but all non-telecom companies, all enterprises are going to benefit. And if an enterprise benefits, you and I benefit also because they render services. Suppose a Maruti Udyog becomes more efficient, they become globally more competitive, an Apollo Hospital Group becomes more efficient due to remote surgery that Mr. Tiwari also mentioned. I think we're all going to benefit. Our rural brethren will benefit. Here, we are now thinking of talking of something which our cabinet, our government has taken a very historic step because they have placed the interests of the common man, the public, and the economy before the sectoral interests of any particular group.
Okay.
I think that's very important. And we need to appreciate that because I will keep on stressing that again and again. This is a G for all. This is the first G for all, including machines.
Okay.
Like Mr. Tiwari said, this is the one which is going to transform manufacturing efficiency. Whether it is in Maruti Udyog or Toyota or TVS manufacturing, all of them can become far more efficient because they have never had an opportunity to digitalize so far. And that is why we are not even able to leverage our geopolitical advantage, which everybody talks about.
Okay.
We have to be globally competitive. And for that, this is a paramount necessity. We have no alternative. Even yesterday I mentioned somewhere, this is the TINA factor. If
Indeed.
you talk of 5G, there is no alternative. We have to be.
Mr. Ramchandran, you mentioned that this is a G for all. That is 5G we're talking about. But interestingly, there are reactions coming in where it looks like the bigger telecom players perhaps are a bit uncomfortable with the big techs also getting a foothold there.
I would like to correct that slightly, Vishal Bhai, with your kind permission.
Please.
Let us not keep talking of tech companies. It is non-telecom and enterprises.
Okay.
Do we want only two, three big players to benefit in this country, an oligopoly? Or do we want hundreds of enterprises in the country to benefit? Do we want hundreds and thousands of agricultural enterprises to benefit? That is a moot point, and that's what the government has said. Here, it is not the health and happiness of only one person, it is the health and happiness of the economy of the nation. I think we have to appreciate that. Everybody, and it is going to be a win-win for everybody. Even the telcos are going to benefit because if enterprises become more efficient, their external communications become more, and the telcos preserve is external communication, not internal communications. Theirs is public land mobile network, PLMN, as Mr. Tiwari would endorse. It is a public telecommunication system they are in.
Okay.
And what we are now for enterprises, agriculture is internal, captive usage. They are not connected to the public. They do not make any revenue directly. So therefore, there is no competition.
Okay.
Two completely different playing fields, two completely different games which are being played.
Okay.
One cannot say, I will be in this and that also, and you've got an exclusive preserve of external communication.
Okay. Let me bring in both. Okay. I'll come back to you, Mr. Ramchandran, on that part. Let me bring in both Mr. Tiwari and Shubhmoy here as well. Mr. Tiwari, would you agree with what Mr. Ramchandran is pointing out, that it's telecom and non-telecom companies, enterprises rather, those companies, it can be a company working in perhaps agri-marketing aspect, or perhaps, allied agri-products as well, or healthcare sector, or even machine tools, or manufacturing, or even services also.
So that's what I have said initially actually. This 5G, as per the specification itself, machine to machine, massive machine to machine communication. This is one beauty actually, which was not earlier in 4G actually. So it is going to be in 5G and even beyond 5G, that is kind of 6G actually. So as per the use case actually, this massive machine communication, I mentioned one example of connected vehicles, that is ambulance or even any vehicle, electronic vehicles and flying machines also. All these things that is possible only in this 5G. And 5G is not limited up to this only. It is useful for any industrial application, be it agriculture, healthcare, even your warehouse management also. The efficient way to manage the warehouse is through 5G applications. So all these are working actually 5G apart from common citizen, and every life of the common citizen will definitely be affected, benefit in a beneficial way actually, but industry will affect very much more actually, and they will be benefited and they will contribute to the higher GDP of the country. So the current cabinet approval actually that has taken care of all these things. Now coming back to the, envisaging how this enterprise business will come into the telecom domain. So for that, some 4 routes have already been identified by the cabinet. One is the telecom, network slicing, which is only available in 5G. So a slice of the network will be created actually for the industry portion. Second is the, TSPs can provide a network for the enterprises. Third is that TSP will lease out their own by auction acquired spectrum for the industry. And fourth, of course, TRAI has suggested that we should keep out some separate chunk of the spectrum for which there is a demand analysis will be there, and based on that there will be a separate reference to the TRAI, and regulator will come out with some recommendations that will be adopted at later age. So in this cabinet note actually, we have taken care, government has taken care of every possible aspect so that country growth is inclusive for every common citizen, for including industry and everything. Without industrial revolution, that is industry 4.0, probably our real reaping benefit of the 5G will not be ascertained.
Actually. Okay. Yeah, Shubhmoy, on this aspect, earlier in your first response, you're talking about the economic impact of the 5G rollout, and now that we are going a bit deeper into it, it becomes more clear as to how that economic impact will come about, through the changes in the industry and for the industry as well. These all aspects when we are looking at, how do you see things moving from here onwards, and the immediate benefits for the economy specifically?
Right. When you look at it this way, first of all, we got to agree that our telecom movement in the early 90s followed a particular trajectory. After that, some developments occurred which were very beneficial, some which were not very beneficial. As a result, now when we are coming on to a new generation, it is necessary for the government to take account of the past also. So to compare ourselves that, we should be opening, basically the demand as we are saying is that should it be open for everybody? All the entire telecom licensing should be open for everybody. Should a telecom company and a non-telecom company, should they be bidding on the same platform, and therefore the pricing change? Now, what Mr. Tiwari said is, I would tend to go with that essentially there are, when you are clearing up a historical cobweb, then there are certain limitations to which one can go, and that is necessary. So let's first get the telecom companies to be able to develop what I should call the infrastructure of the new
put the ecosystem in place.
Right. Now, when they're taking it, obviously they will be the first movers advantage, and because of that, they will obviously be reaping some economies of scale. It comes like practically in any industry. I really can't think of any country, any major country, where this sort of a discussion dialogue hasn't happened. When you give out an oil field, for instance, there are certain, the choice gets quite determined by whom you're giving it to and what principles you're giving it to. So therefore, that choice always plays. That's the economic point of view. Now, to say that every industry should be able to come in, what Mr. Ramchandran was saying, that telecom, that we shouldn't be sort of hidebound by the definition. Well, there's a point of view that's taken on well, but the problem there is that I, as of now, don't see too many apps and too many organizations having come up to that level of digital ability to be able to really take advantage.
Okay.
So I don't think that there's too much that we are losing out right now by letting the telecom companies get into the fray, getting into it, shape it up. Let's see what's happening. For instance, to take an example from South Korea allowed 5G self-automated cars.
Okay.
It hasn't really picked up. I mean, it's taken time. So, there's a time between which a technology comes into play, business evaluates how well they can do it, and then they move in.
And the time in which we see the results of that
Coming in. So I would say that given the huge potential of 5G, this is a good start.
Okay.
We can quibble over the prices. Probably I would say that the different bands, because remember the voice-to-voice telephony requirements would still be there, and there's clogging. Adequate amount of spectrum is still not there. And now when a first-time telecom mover moves in, before you can tell her there's speed in broadband, the person first wants to know whether I can even connect properly. And
connectivity
we are getting problems there in the low megahertz. Essentially there's a problem there in terms of the allocational efficiencies, and those have not been sorted out.
Okay.
So those will still need to be sorted out essentially.
Okay.
Now when we are getting into all this sort of stuff, we need to ensure. But I would say that this is a good place to be in right now.
Okay.
And let's see where we can take it on.
Okay.
I'm not sure about the BSNL thing, but that we'll talk later.
Okay, definitely. That is a different issue altogether, and we will have a good detailed discussion on that as well. I'll come to you, Mr. Tiwari, but let me first bring in quickly, for a concluding comment from Mr. Ramchandran. Mr. Ramchandran, it's going to be interesting to understand what are going to be, from the industry's perspective, the low-hanging fruits in terms of the immediate achievements when we're talking about the rollout.
Michelle Bhai. See, there are some beautiful cases already established in the world. I think we should be a little aware of what is happening in the rest of the world. For example, Germany has issued more than 70 private networks, 5G network licenses. And on a very different frame. It is not bidding, it is because it's only one-to-one user. And people have started realizing benefits. You go to Italy, Livorno port there has established a 5G private network, like Mr. Tiwari said, for improving the transportation logistics, warehouse logistics, because in a port, the turnaround time is of paramount significance. That establishes how many ships will come there for fast disembarking and loading. And that has been vastly improved. There are efficiency improvements which are being talked about of 150% and more return on investment. And we took that same model from BIF and projected the same model for our JNPT port, Jawaharlal Nehru Port Trust, the largest port. And we see there that you can improve your return on investment by 138%, up to 138%. We projected the same model on Chennai Port Trust, on their actual operations, and we see an improvement possible of 76%. So these are all very much low-hanging fruits, readily available. And I would say that even on the manufacturing shop floor, I've been a manufacturing man for 24 years of my life in R&D and manufacturing. There are ample fruits ready to be taken there, whether it's a Maruti shop floor or any manufacturing shop, L&T. See, who are not ready? We should dispel this illusion that people are not ready. An L&T, a TCS, so many engineering firms are ready. Tata has got one of the most advanced engineering setups, and they would all benefit by having a 5G captive network.
That does explain a lot of things, Mr. Ramchandran. We're running short of time. Mr. Tiwari also wants to make some concluding comments before we bring this to an end. But as Mr. Ramchandran is pointing out, it looks clear, when we're talking about the industry aspect, the domestic industry seems to be pretty equipped, pretty confident. And once the 5G push is there, we might see those results in economic terms, which Shubhmoy was referring to.
See, one thing, and I will clarify on what Shubhai also mentioned. See, ecosystem kind of thing actually, product ecosystem. Today, because we are entering something 2 years late at least, India. And that 2 years time was not wasted actually. We have utilized, we are having end to end, we are having 2-3 cores also. CDOT is having one core, TCS is having one core, as Mr. Ramchandra has also already mentioned. And all these industries, for their end-to-end setup of the network, there are Indian industries, they have now come up with the product actually for the 5G, which is already available, and some 10-15 days back, actually, there was demonstration demo in Sanchar Bhavan also, and Honorable MOC Minister has visited there actually. So end-to-end product is there. All these products are readily available for the industry transformation. They can take the benefit of this. And as big, companies, big industrial houses, they can really get those businesses. I will say that even in the 4G also, although capability is not that efficient, but that is already there in the many enterprises. They are having network as 4G based, which will be transferred to the 5G. And then efficiency of the industries will be very much this thing. And even right now, today in the 4G perspective, India population, 98% of the population is on 4G mobile actually. 98% population. I'm not talking about the geography, but population wise 98% is covered. They can easily be as a low hanging fruit. These service providers can take them on the 5G.
5G.
Of course, it will require huge investment for the product, for the technology actually. So that is the perspective.
Okay, indeed, that sums up a lot of things. Thank you so much, Mr. A.K. Tiwari and Mr. Shubhmoy Bhattacharjee and Mr. T.V. Ramachandran as well for sharing your views and insight with us and our viewers. Clearly, this is all about the 5G spectrum allocation, rollout, implementation, the significance and the challenges therein as well. We'll keep a close watch on this particular aspect of our economy and keep on bringing you other discussions as well. Till then, keep watching Sansad Television. Thank you.